and welcome to this week's reading. This is the reading for the week of April 23rd to 29th, 2023. It's a beautiful day out, as I've just shown you. I'm doing this on the Sunday because, as per usual, it's been a rather busy week. So we'll get right into our reading. We have an interesting theme about relating this week, relating to the outer world in particular. It is important to remember that we've just gone into Mercury retrograde. Certainly in Western astrology, we have gone into Jupiter in Taurus. So that's very, very good for the idea of expanding abundance and expanding prosperity. There's a whole lot of and actually today, I should say in particular, Mercury retrograde has a really nice has some really nice aspects, some nice sextiles that are making will make the energy today very comfortable, very easy. Like there's a lot of good sort of good communicative energy. But at the same time, we may be very tempted to start a lot of new things. And so it probably, you need to wait and reevaluate during this time period. This is not a time period in which you want to be, spearheading new projects. This is really a time to kind of look back at anything that might need to be fixed. And we're going to see some elements of that in here too, which is why I mentioned that in particular. So our tarot decks. Okay, so we've got the angelic tarot, or the angel tarot of Travis McHenry. We've got the yogic path cards. We have the wisdom of the Tao. We've got wisdom of the Tao up here. This is the Osho Zen deck. We've got the fairy, Brian Froud's fairy oracle. We've got the voices of the Dark Mothers, essential oil oracle, the Antarian oracle, and also our Norse rune. So beginning with tarot as always. Okay, so the cards we have are the Six of Wands, the Five of Pentacles, and the Page of Swords. Now, this is an interesting combination because I'm seeing this element in a lot of different places. We have this strength element here. We have, the Six of Wands is a card of leadership. It's a card of victory. So it's a card. It suggests that you are, it suggests being victorious. It suggests, being in a position where people look up to you, where you can have confidence in your position and where you're at. But we have that with the Five of Pentacles. So there's still this concern about security. And then we have the Page of Swords, which is this sort of fear about, who might be watching, who might be gossiping. It's kind of like the spy card. And, so we have these three rather different elements. There's something of a saboteur here. And this is more about the ways in which we focus on our lack rather than on what we have. So the way that I feel about this, especially with a lot of readings that I've been doing for people over the past week, there's definitely this energy of change. Like Six of Wands indicates you may have come into your own in some way, that you know what it is you want to do or what you need to do, like or some path, or conversely, some path that you have been following or maybe following for a long time. You may be saying, okay, this is not the right path, but this is. Okay, so you may have made a shift. You may have made a decision about, say, leaving a job or a relationship, or just transforming something. There's this element here of standing still in your power and in your leadership, and knowing what it is that you can do. And the Six of Wands always has this element of there's a victory in the moment, but there's always going to be a next step. There's always going to be more work to do. So you've had this moment of accomplishment, or this moment of realization, that's now being kind of clouded by this sabotage of thoughts that are about, well, yes, I'd love to make that change. I'd love to go into that business. I'd love to do that thing, but I don't know if I'm going to make enough money. The job I have now is good and secure. Things like this that may be popping up. There may be this fear of lack that really is kind of a saboteur. Like I'm feeling more like the Page of Swords is an internal saboteur and not necessarily somebody on the outside who's trying to quote unquote get you. I feel like it's more about what's going on with you. And I think what bolsters that is this turning in card, because this is the card of meditation, and it's the card of not listening to see all these voices that are in the background here. And the woman is, kind of flowing in her own element with her eyes closed in meditation. And she's not listening to all of these voices around her. So yeah, it really is about going within and listening to your own voice. These two, as these figures here also look like phantoms. Okay, so they don't look real, and that's probably because they're not. They're just these voices that have, that may have come out of our past traumas or experiences. They're things that tell us that we can't do something, or that are immediately want to jump to the worst conclusion or sense danger in something. So the turning in card is really about, you need to shut those voices out, find the quiet space, and listen to what's going on in your own head, because that is where the truth is going to be, not not from all the stuff you're hearing around you. Now, that's especially Mercury retrograde-ish, because one of the things about retrograde is that we receive false communications, or at least ones that are doubtful or unreliable. So there needs to be some caution about listening to, letting the voices of doubt, whether they're in your head or whether they're reflected in something in the outside. We need to be careful about that and make sure that we're standing in our own truth and our own power over here. Now, this is the fairy oracle. We have the bodacious Bodak. And interesting, yeah, again, this is the card of sabotage or saboteurs. Somebody who's coming in uninvited and meddling in an issue. And again, I don't know that this is necessarily, it can be you and it can be somebody else. But in this case, I don't feel that it's somebody who's directly meddling, who's directly saying something to you that is, that there isn't somebody in the outside who's like plotting behind your back. Okay, not that kind of energy. I feel like this is somebody who, I feel like this is more, again, the voices around us, these kind of, the script that plays in our heads from, maybe past experiences, past rejections, that voice that tells us of weakness, that tells us that we're not good enough. And this is saying, no, you are good enough. And, so you want to, you don't want to listen to that sabotaging voice, because it's trying to steer you in the wrong direction. So just, I feel like these two very much go together, along with the Page of Swords over here, because, this is not, this is a time to finally let go of those voices and not, they may always be there. I think they're part of us. Sometimes those voices, sometimes that voice can be something that can be potentially warning us against something that maybe we do need to pay attention to. But more than often than not, that voice kind of overhypes what's going on in our lives and makes, worries far too much about what could happen rather than actually what's going on. And it's important to remember that timing is everything. I mean, if you are, it is a good time just to sit back and reevaluate, but reevaluate on your own terms, not somebody else's. That's really what I'm seeing here. And along with this theme, we have in the yogic path, we have Chinnamasta. And Chinnamasta is about about letting go. I mean, this is about cutting the head off, letting the life force flow out and nourish. Because, the meaning of this card literally has to do with having like this deep let go, because, you are hanging on to certain patterns and situations that, it's just, has to be a radical discontinuity. And that's what Chinnamasta is. I mean, there's this sort of radical, if your head's giving you trouble, cut it off kind of thing, and move into, this other space of well-being, because you also have Ojas, and this card is about, I don't know if that's Ojas or Oyas, but there's this is a card of health and well-being. So this is about that, when people look at you and say, wow, you look radiant. Like, this is about the inner you that shines out and that people can see, that you don't want to be overshadowed, or that you don't want to put a barrier between the world and this inner you, because people will look at you and they'll say, wow, you look very radiant, and that's because that is usually when your own authenticity is coming out and coming through. So yeah, so this is about letting go so that this authenticity can shine through, and not letting yourself be, um, you know, not trying to hide your true self from the world. See, there's a lot here about opening up, standing kind of in your own power, listening to your own voice. Now the thing is, though, when we've been kind of in an isolation, okay, or a withdrawn state, because there's been a whole lot recently about resting up, and I'm seeing this for a lot of people. There's this idea of taking a rest, taking it easy. Again, this is a time to reevaluate, not a time to start a lot of new things. But in that, there's this getting in touch with this, and as part of that, sometimes we may feel, as we start to think about our interactions with the outside world, as we start to present our face, we may, if we encounter any kind of resistance, we may immediately fall into this mode of being angry or defensive. Okay, and I think that's what this card, the Diti card, has to do with. Because this is the card of revenge, and what this is saying is, just because you feel like you might want to do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And this is the card, this is exactly that card. This is when I'm wronged about something and I'm going to get somebody back. And, and the point is that, this is not about making revenge. This is not about taking that energy and, fighting with somebody or fighting the world. This is not about fighting with these. You're basically, fighting with shadows. You're tilting at windmills. It's not. Don't, and even if somebody has legitimately wronged you, that's not where you really want to spend your energy, is what this card is saying. Okay, you want to spend your energy more productively. Whatever that feeling is. Typically, when we have a hard time forgiving somebody, I mean, yeah, they may have done something, but right now it's more about releasing that trauma rather than hanging on to it. Because the more that we feed it when we get angry and we want to take that kind of action, we don't actually release that feeling and we don't get back into the flow. So that person, who may have wronged us, it's like they're still perpetually wronging us. You know what I mean? Like, we're, as we continue to get angry and start, plotting what we're going to say, plotting our next move. This is all about these kinds of barriers that we have to coming out into authenticity when you have a world that is, that may be not approving or against something that we are choosing to do. And then, of course, we have this fear of lack. Okay, let's look at the, actually, I'm going to go with the Wisdom of the Tao next. Now, this is the Confidence card. Okay, so again, reinforcing that message. There's a reason to be confident. There's a reason for you to feel like you're in control and you're in your own power. This card sometimes comes up when we need a reminder of that, when we're not feeling confident, when we're not, when we might be moody, or we might be, just feeling a certain amount of doubt about something. And actually, one of the meanings of this card is, if you are somebody who experiences mood swings and so forth, like, don't beat yourself up over that either. There's a lot, I'm feeling a lot of element here of self-criticism, self-defense. So, and that these are the kinds of things that can very naturally come up during a Mercury retrograde period. I mean, they can come up other times too, but that's definitely a feeling of this. So it's kind of reminding you to stand, in your own power and listen to your own inner voice, because yeah, you are able to, quote unquote, do it. You are able to move ahead and do things. So don't believe that you can't. Okay, you do have, things are more under control than they appear to be. Do remember, this is a time when appearances may not be reality. Now, the Antarian Oracle kind of reinforces that, because we have the Starting Point card. And Starting Point has to do with, sky's the limit. You're at the beginning of something, and it's a good time to think about where you want to go. I mean, again, this is not a great time for action. That can be, and this is actually a card of, dream your biggest dream right now. If there were no barriers and no obstacles, focus on manifesting that. And then later on, the pieces will come together. What's viable and what's not viable will then sort itself out, okay, at a later point. But that doesn't mean, frequently what happens is when we are starting something, when we brainstorm, we immediately nix anything right away that we decide isn't going to work, rather than just getting it all out there. I've had that experience with people where we go through options and they go, oh no, that's not going to work because, oh no, that's not going to work because, and I've done it myself too. But you've got it, this is at a point where you're going to say, forget those words, it's not going to work because. Right now, just consider all possibilities. Consider if you had no obstacles, okay, where you would want to be. Because it's not that you can't manifest. You may not be there now, and there may be certain steps you have to take. But right now, don't worry about that. This is just a time of thinking things through. Again, not a time for action, but a time for thinking things through. You can have confidence in yourself. You have reached a certain point where you can trust, where you're going, and you can trust your inner voice. You don't need to trust these other voices. Okay, now this card, the Melaleuca oil card, essential oil oracle. This is a card of evolution, and the trigger statement is things will never change. And okay, the true statement uses words I do not like. It says I attract only what is for my I'm going to say my best interest. So again, this is like the starting point. You want to think about where you're going, and the sky's the limit. Like don't tell yourself, don't saddle yourself with all the things that probably are going to go wrong, or that probably won't make this work. Just lay it out. And the bottom is the imbalances in relationships that have been keeping you down are no longer needed. You are ready to transform. So, okay, this is like that period of transformation. And that's another thing that needs to be reinforced here, is that we're kind of in a waiting period we're at a gate. We're moving into the next phase. And as we're moving into the next phase of our lives, Pluto in Aquarius definitely is a factor in this, I think, for a lot of people. And I'm seeing how that's affecting a lot of people. It'd be good to have a look at your chart, to look at your own transits, and see, where Pluto is natally in your chart, what house it's in, what degree, and then look at where it's transiting your chart right now, because that will tell you a lot about what area of your life is going to be affected by this. But it's some part of because Pluto has a global effect. It's going to change some of your life tremendously. And a lot of how it's going to affect you depends on how resistant you are to change, or how accepting or how resistant you are to change. So, and by the way, a lot of people know this about me, but I don't like the phrase highest good, because I think it's meaningless. And it splits things into good and evil, and makes categories and prejudgments. And I don't like the idea of highest either, because I always feel that we need to also look at what's the lowest. We don't spend enough time worrying about where we are. We're always worrying about trying to get to somewhere else. So I'm not big on the highest I'm not into ascension and transcendence. That's not my mode. And so to me, it's about what's your best interest. What is the best course of action right now in this situation, or the best course of non-action. So, be aware of this transformation, because this is the evolution card, but I'm just thinking of it more as, you're changing into another form. And finally, we have over here our Norse rune. And of course, very appropriate to the rest of this theme, we have Nauthiz. And Nauthiz is the rune of limitation or restriction. It's a Saturn rune. And when Nauthiz shows up, really the main message of Nauthiz, as Ralph Blum explains it, is, don't take the world personally. This is the idea that you may be facing certain challenges right now. Again, this is a period of sitting back, reevaluating. The other phrase he uses here is, a fisherman can't go to sea, they repair nets. Okay, so what needs to be repaired? What do we have to explore our limitations? Where is it that we actually need to go? Because and where, just as this is talking about the sky's the limit, right now we also need to look at, we can look at all the things we want, but then if we look at all the things that are not maybe going the way we want, where do those fit in? Where do those pieces fit in? It's not always just about having pleasure all the time or having everything you want all the time. Sometimes these often serve a purpose as well. The limitations that we have. So we're looking at trying to get an integrated kind of a picture here. And when it says don't take the world personally, I feel like that has a lot to do with our little saboteurs and things, because people can be jealous of us. People can, want to be offended by perceived slights, intended or not, usually not intended. And you have to recognize that when people lash out at you in a way, it's really, or they do certain things. I remember the first time I encountered this rune years ago, and that interpretation of it, having a day when, you'd walk through the halls of work and you'd say hello to people, and then people would just like, almost glare at you and walk straight past you. And you were like, okay, what did I do to them? But later on, you realize, then the person comes over and they talks to you in a completely normal fashion. Means the person was kind of in their own head, like they may have had something on their mind and not really seen or heard you, but you interpret it as like, oh my God, that person's mad at me. So again, there's this idea that was kind of the first exemplification I had of this rune, like the idea that a lot of times people's behaviors and so forth, doesn't have anything to do with us. We always make it about us, but and maybe sometimes it is about us, who knows, but it more often than not, it's more, people are going through their own stuff, and if you happen to be there, you end up being a projection point for that stuff, completely unintentionally and innocently, and probably that person probably doesn't even have any intention of, making a problem for you. So these are all things to consider as we're doing this reevaluation during this Mercury retrograde period. So so time to let go some stuff, turn inward, get rid of the saboteurs, don't be tempted to lash out at people at this time. And, there's a need to let go of this fear of poverty and this self-sabotage that goes on. So think big, have some confidence, and recognize that you're in a point of transformation. That's it from me for this week. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.